Hey everyone, welcome back to Plot Twists, the channel where we talk about everything reading, writing, and plots. My name is Nikia. I am doing something a little bit different today other than a review. I am looking at 1-star reviews off of Amazon of some of my favorite books. Now, before we begin, I want to address that reading is art. Or writing is art, I should say. And art is one of the most subjective things in the world next to food. Everybody's going to have different tastes. Everybody's going to like different things. So try not to take 1-star reviews too seriously if you like some of these books, like I do. It's really up to you to determine how good the book is. You can go based off of reviews if you want to. I know a lot of people who do that. And it's not a bad way of seeing if a book is for you. But try not to take too much into them. Try not to focus too much on the reviews. Just because a book has a lot of really bad reviews, you may enjoy it. And just because a book has a lot of great reviews, you may hate it. And there's no shame in stopping. If you start reading a book and you find out you don't like it, you can stop anytime you want. That's the fun thing about reading. So if a book sounds interesting at all to you, read it. On another quick note, I wanted to mention today, baby. I wanted to mention today that I am wearing a t-shirt of my boyfriend's book, actually. He's got a trilogy. He's only got 2 books right now. He has the Bloodlines of Atmos series. Bloodlines of Atmos by J.P. Edgar. This is the story of Jace, the first book. His second book, the story of Jace, book 2, Survivor, is also out at the moment. And the trilogy is coming soon. Due to COVID, production has been a little different, and so production has been put behind a little bit. But you can buy these off of Amazon or off of my boyfriend's website at jpedgar.com. I'll go ahead and link both the Amazon and his website together, where you can buy merch, you can buy t-shirts, hoodies. You can also buy signed copies as well. He's more than happy to do that. And that's about it. I do like his book a lot. He's got a great character. He has this beautiful way of writing something that's young adult in feel, but not young adult at all. Oh my god, what are you doing? My cat is messing with my light. But if you or anybody you know really likes young adult, but they want to transition into more adult books, this is a great place to start, especially with fantasy. And I'm not just saying that because he's my boyfriend, obviously. It is really nice. So yes, I highly recommend Bloodlines of Atmos by J.P. Edgar. So the first book I want to start out with today is actually the Dritz saga at this point, series, really. The Dark Elf Trilogy is what I'm starting out with, Homeland, and I'm starting with this book, because as you can tell, I have named my cats after Dritz and Guinevere. In terms of Dungeons & Dragons novels, it has been around for a while and is very influential in terms of the fantasy genre. If you don't know the story, Dritz is a dark elf, or a drow, who lives in the Underdark, or lived in the Underdark, I should say, which is below the surface world in Faerun. He lives under there. The drow are typically very vicious. They are run by a female or matriarchy society where males tend to be little more than servants, especially if they are not firstborns. Usually there's only 2 brothers and then more sisters. Dritz starts out life as a 3rd brother. So he is then going to be sacrificed to Loth, the spider goddess that the drow worship, but things go a little bit differently, and he is saved, and he grows up to be one of the best fighters in Menzoberranzan, the city that he lives in. The Dark Elf Trilogy, and then all of the books after involving Dritz, follow his life and how he differs from the drow. How he wants peace, he wants friendship and love and things like that. So it's a very fun book. It's obviously older, it's an older fantasy, so it is going to have issues. It's not going to be as fresh as like a modern fantasy would be. which is totally fine. And it has in recent years become more of a young adult series, I've noticed. That tends to happen with a lot of books, especially fantasy books. You'll see them released as adult novels because they tend to have a lot of violence in them. And then as the years go on and we become less strict on the guidelines that children can follow, they tend to go a little bit further down in the reading order. But they're still great books. They're still great to read as adults. And honestly, if you are an adult and you want to read young adult, read it. Who cares? With that said, it is one of my favorite books, like I said, or at least one of my favorite series. And I'm going to start with the first in the Dark Elf Trilogy. Alright, the first review we have here is, okay if you're 13 and obsessed with sword fights. I mean, they're a battle-hardened society. The Drow live off of killing each other. That's how status is. That's their way of life. That's their laws. The only time it's illegal to murder somebody is when you get caught. Obsessed with sword fights. I already have issues with this first one here. So it goes on to say, wow, if this guy can publish, anyone can. I mean, yes, technically, everybody can. Gives me hope for writing my own book ventures. This is fine if you are 13 and want to read about some guy's endless sword, fist, judo, whatever fights. Snoring noises. If you are a grown-up who wants intelligent, fun adventure and good original writing, you have wandered to the wrong side of the aisle. I don't know how to respond to that. I really don't. Like, it just... I guess there was just too much fighting for them in this book, which is odd because, like I said, their entire society is based off of fighting and survival of that way. So if you go into a book where the main point of it is that a character is surrounded by people who, just endless violence, and then you complain about the amount of violence, I got nothing for you, man. I really don't. It just seems like you probably shouldn't have read it. I mean, in terms of original writing, fun adventure and good original writing, as I said, it's an older book, and granted, R.E. Salvatore's writing, by today's standards, could be considered basic, I will admit, but it's also fantasy. Much of fantasy's appeal is world building, and it's much more geared towards character development and personality and things like that. So Dritz's story tends to be more on the inward reflection side, which is what I really loved about it. I got to see more of the character rather than just a bunch of fighting. There's reasons for his fighting, and we get to see how he feels about the fighting. Alright, moving on to the next one. Too many publication versions. You gave the book 1 star because you didn't like how many versions there were of it? I paid for the digital version of this book. Imagine my surprise when it's available under Kindle Unlimited, and I have Kindle Unlimited. Amazon blames author. They can publish or tweak and sell different version. It doesn't have to list the Kindle Unlimited version. I have too many free books I can read without being manipulated by the system. The pleasure has gone out of these books for me. What does that have to do with the book? What does that have to do with the story? Oh my god. Was this helpful? No. One person found this helpful. Who found this helpful? I just want to talk. I just want to talk. 1 star review. Didn't buy. Not bought. Helpful. Let's see here. Next one. Forget it. Too many odd names and too much gobbledygook for a story. Oh my god. Hey! Could you 2 not fight right now? I'm in the middle of something. I am doing things. Okay? This is gonna pay for your kibble. Alright, let's see here. Forget it. Too many odd names and too much gobbledygook for a story. I have better things to do with my time. I have never been a Dungeons & Dragons fan either. Maybe that would have helped. Oh, people, too many odd names. You're reading a fantasy story. Oh my god. Why'd you pick it up? Like, Dritz's name is on the back. You didn't think that that was just gonna introduce you? His mother's name is Malice. Like, as in bad. Like, too much gobbledygook. What is gobbledygook? I don't understand. This would be so much better to review if these were more like they had issues with the plot or they had issues with the character. This is just... They didn't like the names and they don't like Dungeons and Dragons. Well, then why'd you pick it up? It's a it says it on the cover. It says Dungeons and Dragons novel, Forgotten Realms, Homeland, the Dark Elf Trilogy. I just end my suffering now. Okay, so here's the next one. Just Awful. I think your opinion of this book depends heavily on when you read it. Fair. I mean, if you're a younger person, you might enjoy it a little bit better. If I had read it after I discovered it right after D&D, I would have loved this thing. Okay. But you understand what D&D... Okay. Reading it as an adult is unbearable. Drow culture is unbelievable as a piece of world building, and that they are not sustainable as a real society, but exist solely to twirl their metaphorical villain mustaches. Also, the dialogue is stilted and full of cliches. No one talks like this. Avoid it unless you are playing a Drow character in Forgotten Realms game, and go reread The Name of the Wind or something. Okay. Let's talk about believable societies in fantasy. This person has picked up a book in which a race of elves who have the ability to see in the dark, levitate, and use magic. There are dragons in this world. Dragons are mentioned in this world. There is a cat, a panther, that comes out of an onyx figurine that lives in what is basically described as a starland. And they're worried about the society being believable. I don't know if you can see the gears turning in my head, but I'm really trying to freaking understand that. The things people get concerned about, the things people get hung up on when reading fantasy books is just odd to me. I don't understand why the society being sustainable is so important and exists solely to twirl their metaphorical villain mustaches. I mean, kind of, in a way. I can see what they mean, that the society of the Drow is really just be as evil as possible, so this guy looks like a good guy. Which he doesn't really need to be. He finds murder abhorrent. I don't know, I don't understand the hang-up here. I really don't. Okay, so let's move on from that. The next book I'm going to look at is Timekeeper by Tara Sim. Timekeeper is this beautiful story. It is a young adult story set in alternative Victoria, England, where the world is controlled by clock towers, or at least time is controlled by clock towers, where a damaged clock can fracture time, and a destroyed one can stop it completely. So the world has created clock keepers, or clockwork mechanics, that make sure that the clock towers throughout England and the world are maintained so that time does not stop. Danny is a clockwork mechanic. He's one of the youngest, if not the youngest. I believe he is actually the youngest clockwork mechanic in England. His father was lost to a town whose clock was stopped. Nobody can get in, nobody can get out. So, for all intents and purposes, his father is basically dead. So Danny takes up the mantle to become a clockwork mechanic in an attempt to not only follow his own dreams, but to one day potentially save his father. And then one day, the clock in Enfield. A clock in Enfield starts having problems, so Danny has to then solve that. This is an LGBT book as well. the main character is gay. He does end up getting a boyfriend. I won't go into too much more than that because there's a lot of spoilers. But this is one of my favorite books. The writing is just beautiful. It has so many adult themes that most kids struggle with, but it puts it in a beautiful perspective. It has beautiful lines. The first line in this book is 2 o'clock was missing. Not the number 2 was missing, 2 o'clock. The time itself, the hour of 2 p.m. was missing. So it draws you in right away, and it's just beautiful. Danny is a great character. He struggles with the prejudice of being so young for a clockmaker. Clockmaker. A clock mechanic. And hello, Guinevere. This is Guinevere. This is Driz's sister. What are you doing? It's a very interesting world. I like it. It's very steampunky as well. So let's go ahead and get into the 1-star reviews. First one. 1 star. Awfully weird. I don't understand 1 or 2 word reviews. I really don't. What does awfully weird mean? Like, yeah, it's weird. It's fantasy. It's fake. It's weird. Time is stopping. Like, yeah, that's odd. That would be very odd. Guinevere. Gwen, stop. Listen to that purr. If you don't like weird things, read true fiction, or, not true fiction, true crime. Read contemporary fiction, I guess. I don't know what you want out of life. Okay, let's go with this one. It's not good. This book was underdeveloped and boring. There were a lot of missed opportunities. I wanted more from the protagonist, but the book was simply full of things simply happening to him, telling not showing, only to be solved within the same chapter, and often the same page. I'm not going to talk about this character, but another character was personality-less. They were in instant love without really sharing much about themselves. Random inserts of mythology thrown in were the only parts I enjoyed. Just overall bad read. I mean, okay, I can kind of see where this person's coming from. A lot of what happens to Danny does get resolved fairly quickly. And it's because it's not the important things that are happening to him. The important things throughout this book are his dad being caught in a time-frozen city, bombs going off in the clock towers. Those are the main things that are really happening to him. His love interest does show up and is a major point of the story, but everything else that happens to him is over pretty quickly because they would be over pretty quickly in real life. So yeah, they're not the main issues that happen. Timekeeper is also a trilogy. They talk about telling, not showing. This book does a lot of showing. I think it does, anyway. There are a few parts I can understand being a little bit more telly rather than showy, so I understand that. But I think this person just flat out missed the point. This one just caught me. 1 star. Nope. I don't read Bo Ninck's book about homosexuals. I gigger if I paid gore it with, warning about sexual content, then I have a right to voice my opinion. Learn a language. And it does come, not necessarily with a warning, but there is a tag on it that says LGBT. And also, why do we need a warning? I don't understand that. Sexual content, it really gets me. I'll admit, I have not actually finished this series. I have another friend who has, and she has told me that it does get a little bit more heated, more so than we expected for a young adult. But it's not anything, it's not porn. I don't know what this person's complaining about, but it's not that. And So the next book I'm going to go with here is The Cloud Roads, Volume 1 of the Books of the Raxora. This is by Martha Wells. I love any fantasy that doesn't have human main characters, specifically humanoid. I mean, I guess they are humanoid, you can probably tell by the cover. They are humanoid in a sense, but there's not a whole lot vaguely human about them. Moon, the main character, is living amongst groundlings, or what are called groundlings. Pretty much, it seems to just refer to any creature that lives on the ground, vaguely bipedal, not all the time. So he is living amongst them because he doesn't know what he is, actually. He believes himself to be the first of his kind, or the last of his kind, I should say. He vaguely remembers a mother and siblings that he had, but unfortunately they were lost to him, and he's been traveling the world, or what's called three worlds, by himself ever since, which the three worlds tends to refer to the sky, the earth, and then the water. So there are water creatures, things talk, everybody has a different language, and that's something that I really like about this book. So it's a really fun read. I will admit, it can be a little slow at times. It does tend to... it does tend to drag. But what I like about it is that while it's dragging, you're invested as well. Because they're talking about all this culture, all this world building, and I love world. I am a sucker for world building. Give me a new world, I'm there. I want to know everything about it. I want to live in it. All of that. So Moon is then picked up by a group of Raxora, which then explains what he is, and he attempts to fit in. So it's very much a stranger in a strange land story. It's a great story. It's also short, but it is a series. So let's go ahead and look at these 1-star reviews. Never mind, there are none. So in that case, I will go into the 2 stars. No Hum. I'm a fan of the Murderbot series. Another series by Martha Wells. This story I found uncompelling, uninteresting, and frankly downright boring. I began skimming in earnest about 150 pages. Considering it's a 290-page book, I don't know why you didn't just stop. Honestly. I mean... Like I said earlier, I can understand that. It does get boring at times. It can grind to just about a halt. Especially with Moon's inward reflections. Those can be pretty rough. So I'll give that one a pass. It's not bad. Let's see here. Sadly disappointed. I read the reviews and bought my first Kindle book thinking it was science fiction. I sadly learned that it was pure fantasy. Why didn't you stop then? Reviewing a book badly because it's not the genre you like really upsets me. I don't like nonfiction. I'm not going to pick up a nonfiction book, read it, and then complain online that I didn't like it. I don't understand. I really don't. I don't get that. I was determined to be open-minded. Good for you. I can accept that. And to finish the book. It kept my attention at first, and had some interesting ideas, but I slowly lost interest. It seems the author couldn't decide between humanoid, avian, or insect characteristics, so she combined them all to make very far-fetched characters. You're reading a fantasy. I mean, that's... What'd you want? You're just really confused there. I found the writing very simplistic. Yeah, I guess it can be. As was the story. This is a series, this is an opening to a series, so the initial story can be a little bit more simplistic. The other books get a little bit more complicated as it goes, but I would somewhat agree that the story is simplistic. But still determined to stick with it, I plodded along. Or plodded on. Good for you. This is until the last part of the book that includes extended battle scenes that seemed like it would never end. And at that point, I knew how the story would end, and didn't think I needed to prolong the boredom. I think this book would be fine for young adult fantasy fans, but it was just not challenging enough for my taste. Fair. I can accept that. I still think this is a little bit more on you for picking up a book that's outside of your genre, and while I applaud the fact that you gave it a good shot, you got pretty far, you got to the 3rd act, you tried. You really did try. So I can tell that this is an honest review. You made the attempt. I totally understand that. These characters are shapeshifters, so when they mentioned that the author couldn't decide between humanoid, avian, or insect, I don't know where they're getting insect from. This is a completely different race of characters. They're more, I would call them reptilian. I mean, their names are Rex, Sora, Soar, Lizard. Use a little bit of brain power there, Again, it's a fantasy. I'm assuming that that's something that you don't like. You mentioned before that you learned that it was purely fantasy and you tend to read science fiction, so... science fiction tends to have aliens in it. You can just pretend they were aliens? I don't understand, but yeah. So it seems the issues that this person had were more on them in terms of the book itself. So it does seem like the book itself did anything really wrong other than be boring, which is a completely acceptable response. The worst thing a book can be is boring. But also, as I've said before in this video, it's boring to you, wasn't boring to me, and that's totally okay. So, while I can accept this, I think they needed to rethink reviewing this book, honestly. That's something that people do when they pick up a book. They feel they need to review it, so they'll say whatever comes to mind. In a lot of cases, if it's something like this, if it's a genre that you just don't like and you've accidentally read it, don't hurt the author for something that you did. Bad reviews hurt authors. So don't give a book a 1 or 2 star review just because you don't like the genre. Give it a review because it spoke to you in a certain way. Now, obviously, you could argue in this case that they found it boring. Okay, that's fine. But when you go with these reviews, make sure you're reviewing for the right reason. Make sure that your point is brought across, that the point of your review was that it was boring, not that it was fantasy, or science fiction, or romance, or anything else. Alright. The Cloud Road seemed like an outline of a decent story. The Cloud Road seemed like an outline for a decent story, too bare bones to be immersive in any way. Descriptions of anything, Rick's or in society, characters, animals, settings, were so brief I often lost track of who was who, or what anyone in the book was talking about at any given time. I had to look back to see if there was something I missed. The only character who had any depth at all to me was Celis, a woman the main character lived with very briefly in the beginning of the book. Everyone else seemed like cardboard cutouts. This book was disappointing because the basic world and premise were both interesting, but the actual writing fell flat. Again, I will give this one a pass. It's a relatively good review in terms of explaining why they didn't like it. I can see where they get the comparison that it's an outline of a decent story. There are points where the writing can be slow. Martha Wells does struggle to describe a few things in, I'll say, major amount of detail, but not so much that I couldn't imagine what they look like. Celis, she, in comparison to everybody else in the book, as they say, being a cardboard cutout, I felt like she was the most cardboard cutout of all the characters. It struggles because it's primarily in Moon's perspective, it's not first person. He's dealing with characters that are set in their society. They know each other, they've known each other for their entire lives, they know everything about each other, and then Moon is this new thing. Moon is the alien, in a sense, here. So everybody else being compared to cardboard cutouts is a little strange to me, because I got the sense that everybody just didn't know what to do with Moon. And honestly, of all the characters besides Celis, I think Moon is a little bit more of the cardboard cutout character. But yeah, Celis was more the cardboard cutout character to me. She was the jealous girlfriend, basically, that rats him out to everybody. So yeah, she was just weird. Alright, the last one for Cloud Roads here. Very good book. 2 stars. I couldn't put it down. It draws you in with every page that you read. I can't wait to read the next one. And you gave it 2 stars? Do you know how rating works? Like, if this was a good book and you only gave it 2 stars, I want to read what you give a 5 star to. I really do. That just seems insane to me. Again, this brings me back to the other point that I was making. Review for the right reasons. Make sure you understand what you're reviewing for. Because reviews like this hurt the authors a lot. And while one-star reviews have their place, doing so for the wrong reasons is not helpful. It hurts them for no reason. The same can be said with 5-star reviews. Bombing a book with just nothing but 5 stars raises expectations. So, I have, let's just say 30 people in my family, and I have 30 reviews, they're all 5 stars because nobody wants to hurt my feelings. Once that gets out to the main public, beyond my circle, it's just going to make all the 1 stars hurt even more. When we hinge so much on reviews, we don't get a fair look at ourselves. So when it comes to your friends, your family, if they have books that they've published, review them honestly. It may hurt the author, may hurt their feelings. I totally understand. I'm a writer myself. My boyfriend has books. But review them honestly. We need to make sure that we're aware of what we're doing. So like I said, review for the right reasons. So I think that's going to be it for today. Let me know if you like the series. I will make more. I will do more books that I loved. I'll do popular books. If there's any book that you want me to review, I will have an email in the description that you can send your reviews to, or you can send your suggestions to, or you can just say I'm doing great, I need it. Or you can say hi to the cats. I'm sure they'll enjoy that as well. You can also suggest in the comments as well. I will read those. And yeah, so if you like this series, let me know. If you want me to do something else, if you want me to read 5-star reviews of books that I hated, let me know if you want to see that as well. So again, my name is Nakia. Thank you for coming into Plot Twist. Have a great day and keep reading.